Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
Very good.
Week 5 is over, and we are starting to see some teams pull away from the pack, and then others are struggling to make adjustments. We saw USC struggle on the road against Colorado, which was just not what I expected. And win, lose, or draw, if you're not watching App State, you're probably missing one of the most exciting teams in college football because every last one of their games goes down to the wire. For real, like I was watching them this weekend, it was like, man, like I don't know who's going to win this game, and I really don't care because it's been a great game. University of Georgia needs to stop playing with their food. Like, we said it, Jordan Hare Stadium is dangerous for anybody in the SEC, but like it took them till the fourth quarter to pull that one out, and that was bad. We got the Red River rivalry this week. Does Texas keep rolling, or does OU have a secret? That's the real question. So welcome back, Trash Talkers, to the College Football Roundtable, or if you prefer, just Ring Knocker Radio. And that's all we got this week because Joe has got some stuff that he has taken care of. All good. I am your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I'm joined today by Dano Ikebasa in Coastal Connecticut. And let's talk about what games we watched. So, of course, I watched the CU game, and I was surprised. The CU had a lot of fight in them in the second half. I think they really, really did a lot better. This time around, I was surprised, and I think that's a testament to the coaching staff at Colorado to make those adjustments, going into the USC game. But the other part of it is like, if you are a USC fan, you probably want to hire a new defensive coordinator. I know that they had they approached Lincoln Riley and asked him, "Like, hey, what are your thoughts on your defensive coordinator?" He's like, "He's fine, and it's great." Like he.
Well, what's he going to say 4 games into the season?
Yeah, he gave a really non-committal answer, but like if you look at the games that they've had, like they're a lot closer than they should be, with the talent of their offense. I mean, you got Jerry Rice's kid and doggone, returning Heisman Trophy winner. And bottom line, as I legitimately think that Caleb Williams is in jeopardy, not because he's not putting up the numbers, just because his team is not that good. I think they're going to hit a stretch where, they lose 1 or 2. Maybe even 3 games, given the way that they're playing. But, like you blink twice and Colorado was close. And, like, it was like, oh, man, they have a chance to actually, get close. And, like, onside kick was the difference in the game. And it should never be that way, particularly when, you watched Oregon run through Colorado like it was nothing. But I think, advantage playing at home, though, that's a big difference. I think it was a home crowd for CU. And I can tell you, like, every weekend is like homecoming. Like if you watch some of the sideline videos, there's so many people that are coming to support, Deion Sanders and the team.
Yeah.
That, whether you agree with, the methodology or not, I legitimately think like this is a change for college football that not all coaches are going to be able to do. And I think that's going to be interesting.
What's to disagree with? I mean, college kids like being around celebrities. If it helps get people and attention onto your campus, that's a no-lose proposition. That's what you do. I mean, if you can't pull that off, whose fault is that?
Yeah. I mean, there's some advantages, and you look at other coaches that have had like the same kind of storied history of the NFL. You got Trent Dilfer down at UAB. He's slowly muddling along doing some good things. But again, he's just not doing it with the same flair as Deion Sanders. But I wouldn't expect him to because he's a different guy. You know what I mean? And I think,
well, he won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, but that Ravens team was going to win a Super Bowl with whoever happened to be back there.
Yeah, that's true. That's a true statement. So either way, I think it could go, how it's going to go. We'll watch this season and continue. I watch the Wolverines, man. Like, come on.
That team's good.
Yeah,
they're good.
I think they're solid. And JJ McCarthy looked great this week, so I'll play Homer since Joe's not here. I think JJ McCarthy actually looked like really good. He had a couple passing touchdowns. He had one that he ran in. He looked very, very strong. He looked competitive. He looked like a Heisman Trophy candidate. this past
So
week for sure.
when Georgia will just admit to themselves that Brock Bowers is the best player on their team, then they're the best team in the country. But when they have designs about like not using that amazing mismatch that they have and trying to do something other than using the best player arguably in the country at tight end, then they're not nearly as good. And that's a problem for them. And man, Michigan, I don't know that Michigan's the best team, but they're not the best team. You know what I'm saying?
They're not horrible, right? And I'll go back to just to jump on your point again too. Like, look, man, like Brock Bowers is a freak show. And by the way, God, they got another tight end that's just as big and just as athletic. They got those two dudes, man. Put those guys out on the edge and let them do their thing. You know,
like
I think there's an expectation though for the quarterback to play like Stetson Bennett, right? And Stetson Bennett was a very, very creative guy, and he would make things happen.
Player. I thought he was underrated. People kept saying, "Oh, you know, he's a game manager." I'm like, "What game are you watching? This guy is good."
Yeah, like last year, if it would have been as close as it was at halftime, I think they would have broke it open in the third quarter if Stetson Bennett was a quarterback, because that guy, he understands hey, we're down. We need to turn this up. But credit to Georgia, and I will say that I think one of the biggest things that I've seen so far is the teams that are making those adjustments at halftime are the teams that are coming out better in the second half, and they're closing out games, and that's what you really want to see. Speaking of closing out games, how about Ole Miss, old Tosh.0, freaking Lane?
I turned that game off. I thought LSU won it. I wasn't until earlier today. I was reading the comments and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I feel bad about that.
Unbelievable performance by Ole Miss. Like, again, you're at home. You got a chance to go up and win it, and they did. And it was great. LSU, hey, is credit to Brian Kelly. Like, he can say what he wants.
Oh, my God.
They got whipped. Like, I mean, like, you scored almost 100 points in a game. I think it was 100 points. There's over 100 points scored in that football contest. And, 55 of them were Ole Misses. And so the bottom line is, what a bounce back for Ole Miss, because, they got smacked around by Bama. And they came and
Bama looked like Bama. Bama.
Yeah. Well, and I think Bama's finally starting to figure out this whole quarterback situation, because Milroe is good. Yeah. But I think it's just a level of trust. And like now they're just like, hey, man, go rage, young man, and do your thing. So that was pretty interesting. But what other games did you end up watching, Dano?
So I was on the road this week. I went out to the local sports bar to pick up 100 Miles of Hate, which is MTSU at Western Kentucky. And I was excited about it. I was fired up. Western Kentucky just kicked their ass up one side and down the other. Game was over by the end of the first quarter. So that was disappointing. Thursday football just totally sucked. And then I was home Friday. So and then I watched UConn just blow a 17-point lead. We talked about that before we came on, but man, they were up 17-0. They give up the long passing touchdown on the last play of the first half. So now they're up 17-7, and you're still like, this is cool. And at this point, they've run for like 180 yards in the first half, something absurd. Like, their offensive line looks like it's stacked with these All-Americans. Like, they legitimately have more than one All-American on that offensive line, and they are running wild, just wild on this Utah State team. The Utah State comes back, they tie it up, they actually go up a touchdown. So then finally UConn gets it together, hits one long pass, gets back into the passing game. They get the touchdown to tie. And you're thinking, obviously you go for two and just win it outright, because you've been running all over these dudes. By this point, they've racked up, it had to be 220 yards of rushing. It's like, just give it to your fullback. The dude is legit 275. I mean, he's like Jacoby Buchanan back there in UConn uniform. And instead they go to kick the extra point. Extra point is blocked. Game over. UConn loses by 1 point. It was like the most humiliating loss I've ever seen in college football. It was awful.
Yeah. And that's a bad one. Awful. Like, they're 0-5 now, and I think that makes USU 1-4. And USU, like, those dudes, like Utah State.
It's not a good team.
No,
that defense is not good.
No,
and I mean, the offense is okay, but that defense is not good.
Wow.
And, and I also, I took Q's last week to beat Clemson at home. They got smoked. That was awful. Yeah. Boston College pulled it out against UVA. That game was good. Georgia at Auburn, we talked about. And then I watched South Florida beat the crap out of Navy. And that game was ugly too. We'll talk about that in a minute. But oh my God.
Yeah. Like, again, another wild weekend in college football. I think one of the things that I have to say is, like, as we've been doing the roundtable and watching more games, like I'm starting to see like a lot more craziness. Like normally it's just like, oh man, like when you're just watching your team, it's just like, when you're just watching your team, you occasionally pick up a highlight and you're like, oh man, that sucks, but like now it's like watching all these games and you're like, man, there's some teams that have an embarrassment of riches, and then there are teams that are legitimately struggling. And for some of them, it doesn't make any sense. Like for LSU, no reason at all for those guys to be struggling.
And that quarterback is amazing.
Yeah.
LSU's quarterback, he is amazing.
That kid's legit. Can't stay, can't win it. I don't know what's going on. Same thing with like Kansas. And that was one of the games that I had picked, and Kansas didn't even show up because Jalen Daniels didn't even start, so their number one quarterback, the guy that everybody was talking about last year, he didn't even touch the field. He had some back spasm issues or whatever. And again, like name, image, and likeness being what it is, kids are going to hang around to get that extra year of eligibility and that, get that extra year of basically free cash, which is smart.
Well,
like, hey, look,
you can't make it pay to play. That's literally illegal. See, it's some of these kids are legitimately just hanging out to get that check, and then they're going to do whatever.
And as soon as they get that first, tweak up, my back, I'm out.
Yep, I'm out.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that's the case with Jalen Daniels, but there are a lot of players that are kind of falling into that category because, hey, look, man, as long as the check's coming in, you can be Frank Harris and stay there until you're like 90 years old.
Well,
Hashtag
there's a guy. Is he going to play this week?
I have no idea.
That's an interesting question.
Because I mean, he's been in the Chinese jump boot for the last 2 weeks. I don't know if he's, I don't know if he's obviously legitimately hurt because he's in that bracing boot. But it's like, for turf toe, it's like, hey, and the thing is, it's a chronic thing. So he wants to be as healthy as possible because if you're going into the NFL combine injured, like that seriously significantly hurts your draft status.
Yeah, bad deal.
There's no doubt in my mind that Frank Harris is probably going to end up on a team somewhere. But
he's going to get an opportunity. I mean, he's got every chance to wind up in the XFL too. Yeah.
Well, he's got the tools. And again, like some guys disappear and go to like arena football and they actually have great careers, and it's like, it's respectable. It's professional level football. It's just not the NFL, but there's other options out there. But a guy like him, like Frank Harris, should probably run for mayor because it'll probably be a better paycheck than he'll get, making the league minimum in the NFL. We got a sponsor here at As for Football on the Roundtable, and it is BuyerBarn.com. Buyer Barn is founded by a class of 1997 graduate by the name of Dan Robinson. Dan ran a traditional farm co-op and realized that there was a better way to modernize it and bring it into the 21st century. Dan and his co-founder, Dinu, took their experience in IT and development and came up with the world's first farm-to-farm online auction and sales platform. Buyer Barn provides reduced health issues by reducing the overall animal and owner contact, prevents fraud through a buyer and seller rating system. They are fully integrated into the auction platform with secure payments, convenience to buy and sell at your own time, and better market pricing because you get a wider audience. So Buyer Barn is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and is providing a special discount to military veterans who want to assist them in the small family farm revolution. Go to buyerbarn.com or email them at info@buyerbarn.com to find out more. Be on the lookout for the Cal of the Week. Also on socials, and you can always click the button on the side of the As for Football website, and it'll take you to Buyer Barn as well. Again, Dan Robinson has already volunteered to help us cook the goat. We just got to find the right parking spot. And,
we got to start looking into that, man. That's going to be here before you know it.
Yeah, I know, right? And the house that Tom built is going to probably have some fire codes that ain't going to let you like torch up some goat somewhere.
Oh man.
Dano, let's run down service academies if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Army had a bye this week. As you know, we're going to talk about the Boston College game ad nauseum on the Army Football Show. Haven't even put that one together yet, but we're going to record it tomorrow at 6 if you're listening right now. Air Force beat the hell out of San Diego State 49-10. Zach Larrier was 6 of 7 passing for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. Team rushed 52 times for 287 yards. They also had a pick 6. Air Force is good, man. Like, I don't know if they played, quote, anybody this year, but they keep blowing people out. You can only play the teams on your schedule. Like, they've done everything you could possibly ask them to do and then some. Navy lost I hesitate to call it a heartbreaker, but a tough loss at home, 44-30 to the South Florida Bulls. Man, this team is all over the place. I mean, you get blown out in Ireland by Notre Dame. Okay, we all get that. Play extremely competitive on the road at Memphis, okay, that was surprising too, but that was fine. But then to come in against South Florida and just look like you don't have the athletes to compete with South Florida, that I was not expecting. South Florida gifted them 14 points off two incredibly stupid turnovers, one muff punt, and I forgot what the other one was. And then once they realized, oh, these guys have a good rushing defense, but that secondary is a little questionable, they just started throwing all over the place. And I mean, all over the place, and commentary kept talking about why isn't the USF has the nation's leading quarterback who's a quarterback. Why isn't this guy running? Well, because he's thrown for, 280 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, you tell me, fool.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So question, do we think that this is one of those games that Coach Ken could have won? As I'll tell you what, if you're Kenny Amadololo and you're watching this, you're like, yo, I could have blown a 14-point lead and wind up losing by 2 touchdowns at home. That's not that hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I think, man, there's a whole lot going on at Navy, which I'm glad, quite frankly, if they continue to struggle, good on them. But, the reality of it is like they had some opportunities. Like that Memphis game was that was a bad penalty. You've got to play clean. And that's one of the things that, that's like the fourth facet of the game that we don't really talk about. Everybody talks about offense, defense, and special teams, but nobody talks about, penalties. We do like if they don't go your way, everybody complains about oh man, we should have got that pass interference call or whatever. But when you're watching these teams that are racking up, 70, 80 yards and penalties every week, that's a whole other drive. And that's keeping points off the board when you're making mistakes like that. And I think, from a discipline standpoint, you can't say that Navy has a good defense anymore, right? I mean,
that rushing defense is still but they weren't getting sacks. They weren't getting after the quarterback. They can stop the run. They're optimized to stop the run.
Yes.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of other things going on the field besides that.
Yeah. And so I think they're going to continue to struggle this season, which is again, as an Army fan, as a homer for the Army team, I don't care if they win another game. But from the perspective of the way that the coaching move happened, I think it really puts them on notice. It's like, hey man, you did all this, Chet. Hey, look, we're talking to you, buddy. You made this call to dump this guy at the end of the season, and you're no better off than you were last year. As a matter of fact, this deep into the season, they actually had more wins. So it's what's the call on that?
They did not look great. And like you said, as Army fans, it doesn't suck to see Navy struggle. We could see them on the struggle bus a little bit, and that's okay. But they can't decide on a quarterback. I mean, they had this ridiculous quarterback exchange fumble that USF returned for a touchdown. But mostly, you don't think of USF as being one of the most athletic teams in college football, but they just looked like they had clearly superior athletes, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Particularly if you're going to be parked in that conference for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I mean, because if USF has got superior athletes, forget it. There's a lot of teams with better athletes than that.
Yeah.
So Coast Guard Academy is 3-2. They beat MIT 36-14. The Bears led most of the game. MIT scored 7 points in garbage time. Solid win for them on Parents Weekend. Merchant Marine Academy is 3-1. They dropped their game to Salve Regina 35-17. They take on Norwich this Saturday. You want me to do the AP top 10?
Yeah, if you want to.
You have number 1, Georgia, until they get beat. Number 2, Michigan, until Georgia gets beat. Number 3, Texas, until Oklahoma beats them this weekend. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Florida State. Number 6, Penn State. How is Penn State not ahead of Florida State? Number 7, Washington. Number 8, Oregon moves up 1. Number 9, USC drops 1. And number 10, Notre Dame, they come up into the top 10. I still think Notre Dame's got a better team than they've had in a while. That was a pretty impressive win against a solid Duke team, I thought, this weekend.
Yeah. Well, my guy Riley Johnson is out, man. He got rolled over on the ankle the second to the last play of the game. So that kid, Yeah, and he was looking good too. Like I will tell you, that was a great quarterback duel. So if you like great quarterback play, I think both of those guys are good. Like, hey, there's nobody that will deny that Sam Hartman is not legit. Like that guy's a legit athlete, man.
I mean, he should be holding a clipboard on an NFL team right now, waiting for his turn to come up and be a starter. I think he's got that kind of talent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, given the way that the last couple of years have gone, man.
I mean, if you put him in for Daniel Jones, is he going to do worse than that?
Yeah, I seriously doubt it. Yeah, I seriously doubt it. Well, I mean, look at it this way: like you look at all the elite quarterbacks from the last couple of years; they're all starters. You know, CJ Stroud is starting, Bryce Young is starting. Yeah, you know, all those guys like went to the league and
sure enough, they're doing okay for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, the only guy that's really struggling is Justin Fields, and I don't know if that's because he's been in the league for 3 years. I don't know if that's his team or if it's just him or it's a combination of coaching or whatever. But like, he was an elite quarterback in college as well. So when you start looking at these guys that are throwing, 300-400 yards a game,
yeah,
looking solid, I think like how many? I think Sam Hartman only has like 1 or 2 picks, and they're both like tip passes. So it's not like he threw, just completely threw the ball away. And so it'll be interesting to see other notable moves in the top 25. So you had Utah drop from 10 to 18 this week. Whew. After losing to Oregon State. Oregon State is always good, man. Those matchups in Pac-12, it's a revolving door of who's going to upset whom. Like it just depends on, what day and what stadium you're playing at. Only to be surpassed by LSU that dropped from 13 to 23. They're going to be vacating the top 25 if they lose another game for sure. They're 23rd after losing to Ole Miss, and surprisingly, Maryland received 81 votes, and Colorado got 1 vote this week because of their valiant effort, or lack of a better term, against USC. I'm telling you, man, Tua's younger brother is a way better quarterback. I think just from quarterback play, that dude he had like 5 touchdowns, and I think he had 6, one that he ran in this weekend. Yeah, that guy is incredible. He is a good, solid athlete.
Playing Ohio State this weekend? Is that the game?
Yeah, Maryland and Ohio State. That should be a great matchup, just because you've got an emaciated Ohio State offense. And hey, Tua's brother, man, that guy's a gunslinger. He is slinging it all over the place, and so I think he's gonna amount to something. He will probably be a mid-third round draft pick, if not higher than that. But solid player. Top 25 losses this week. Again, we have 20 so far in the season. We're only 6 weeks in. I think the record was 63, and that was 2 years ago. But we are on pace to have more than that. Again, as mentioned, you had Oregon State beat Utah 21-7. Texas beat Kansas 40-14. Notre Dame at Duke. That was a lot closer than the experts thought. Again, that was a great game. If you didn't watch it, it was great. 21-14. Ole Miss beat LSU. Man, that game was a shootout. Like, I literally was about to go to bed as well. I was like, I'm going to watch this till the end, because like, I think old Lane Kiffin's got a trick up his sleeve, and he certainly did. And then University of Kentucky came back, and obviously
that was awful. Did you watch any of that game? That game was awful.
Dude, they beat the brakes off of Florida.
I know. I mean, it was just running the ball at will. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was like, oh yeah, like you guys just beat Tennessee. Like, where was that? Like, where's that? Like clearly there's some serious emotional fallout after that win, because Kentucky just came in and smoked them. Kentucky's a good team, though. Like, I think everybody knows that. But the topic,
they're always good at this time. Let's see how they do late in the season. But I agree with you; they're good.
Yeah, Kentucky usually holds strong for 6 or 7 games, and that's just basically it. But the question that the topic this week that I've seen, and interesting to get your thoughts, like, we know all 3 phases of the game matters, right? So we always talk about offense and defense. I think that's everybody's big thing, because everybody knows X's and O's. But have you noticed it this year, or is it just me? There are a lot of kickers and a lot of special teams miscues that are like costing teams games. Perfect example is UConn. Right?
Yeah, well, that's the one I was going to bring up. Maybe we're just attuned to it because that's what happens when you watch 15 games every Saturday. But it's wild. It's definitely. I watched a game this weekend where somebody lined up for like a 54-yard kick or something, and it was Power 5 team. Power 5 kickers a lot of times can make those kicks, and it came up short. I don't know. I don't know if this has really stuck out to me in the same way. I will say I feel like I've seen more kicks getting blocked this year than ever before.
Yeah, but even still, that's part of it, right? It's
yeah, absolutely.
You know,
The UConn in the UConn game, man, the Utah State guy came off the edge untouched and just full extension, untouched. And the announcers, Ross Tucker was announcing on that game, and he was like flabbergasted.
nice. And it's one of those. It's like, hey, man, what are you guys doing? You know, it's like, it's
Is that right? Oh, in the Navy game, they had a bad snap on an extra point, and Florida, South Florida, one guy just trucked the holder and set up a block so that a faster dude could pick it up, because obviously it's either going to score or it's a dead play, and ran it back for a 2-point conversion in the other direction. So don't see that very often.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then, and I say this because, like, I guess the big thing that kind of popped to my head was like the whole Clemson kicker thing, right? Part of the reason why Clemson is like sucking is because like they're literally pulling kids off the street, right? And I wish that was a joke. Like, I'm seriously like so the kid Jonathan Weiss, who's Clemson's kicker, he's a former backup. Guy was about to start a job in New York City. And Dabo calls him and is like, hey, man, you want to burn off that last year eligibility and come kick for us? And it's like, this dude was like on vacation, about to start his full-time gig. And so he comes back and you're like, what is going on? You know, and like hats off to him for,
sure,
making a sacrifice for the team. Like, hey, look, if I was like walking down the street and was about to go into a real job and coach called me, I'd be like, I think I'm going to go take this real money unless there's a big NIL check that you can cut me. And I seriously doubt that kickers are like loaded in cash right now. So basically what had happened is Vites had the extra year COVID eligibility. So again, here it comes again, the COVID year kicking in. And so this kid comes in, but like he keeps missing kicks. Like he's missed like 3 or 4 kicks, and like the whole purpose of being a kicker is to kick, right?
Well, that's karma, man. Listen, I am totally against everybody playing their 6th, 7th, or 8th year of college football. Like, you're holding down a scholarship that should go to some kid who's trying to get an education, at least in theory. At a certain point, the journey is over. It's just like, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but Am I the only person in America that used 4 years of eligibility in 4 years? Like, it is not that hard.
Yeah, but I think we also have to look at it from this point too. Being service academy guys, like I think service academies are like the only universities in America that punish you by making you stay there longer.
No, but it's fine to have a 5th year. Like, I got no issue with redshirt freshmen and that. Like, but once you're into that 6th year, like, that's some squirrely nonsense right there. 6 years.
Yeah. Like, it's insanity because like, I'm looking at the top team rankings right now. And like, believe it or not, Fresno State is at the top of the heap with 3.3 kicks per game. Right. So when you think about it, like, that's a lot of opportunity. That's 9 points if you hit them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were at 3.7 last year, but you're looking at like, some of these teams that are on the struggle bus are the ones that are kicking, multiple field goals in a game. And then, of course, you've got teams that go for it on 4th down, like Army. They have 2 field goals a game. Like, not surprising because they don't kick a lot. They usually go for it.
Listen, they got that kicker, Moretsky. He's been kicking field goals this year, for which I am heartily happy. Yeah. They lose that UTSA game if he doesn't make a couple of field goals.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is like, that's why you want consistency in the kicking game. Like, it's not, and make no mistake, Rob is not trying to, like, I do not have the skill. Like, I don't know if you've watched the Pat McAfee segment on College Game Day where he watches these kids like, hey, I'm going to give you $25,000 if you can kick this 35-yard field goal. Hey, guess what? Average human can't kick a 30-yard field goal. Like, average human can't even kick an extra point. So like, make no mistake, I'm not like dogging out kids that are missing kicks, but I think there's so much more to that facet of the game that we don't pay attention to. You've got the snap, you've got the hold, like we all heard the joke. We all saw Ace Ventura back in the day, laces out, Dan. But but it was one of the things that, really it was impactful in college football. And you can see a lot of these kickers that are like getting rushed or they've done everything that they could to protect the long snapper. You can't come over the top of that guy anymore. Like when we were in high school and college, like that kid was eating a forearm shiver as soon as the ball left his hand. Now you leave the guy alone so he can actually snap, he recovers, and then he's able to block. And so from the perspective of like winning and losing, and there's no rhyme or reason when you look at like how these teams are ranked as far as kicking is concerned, that no kicker is better than the other, because some teams score more offense. So like, for example, scrolling down about the middle of the list, you've got Notre Dame, if I can find it again, but you got Notre Dame like right next to Arkansas State and North Texas, right? Those guys are all tied for the same number of field goal attempts. But what's the difference between Notre Dame, Arkansas State, and North Texas? Like the quarterback, significantly. So they're scoring touchdowns and kicking extra points, vice field goals. And so when you look at all these, the kickers, like they have an important job, but it doesn't seem as relevant for teams that are, winning by 20, 25, 30 points. But these, teams that are in knife fights, kickers are very important. And like, if you're a team like, I don't know, say LSU or Clemson, like teams that have been struggling a lot this season, that kicker can be the difference between, riding home quiet on the bus or having a party and celebrating. So I think, kicking game is important. I think special teams is all part of it. And
well, you miss you miss an extra point in a close game, and it just makes the whole coaching staff look stupid. Like you just put your coaching staff right under the bus. Like the fan base is going to lose their minds. There's no way to recover.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you miss an extra point?
Right.
And that's one of the things. It's like it should be automatic. And we say that, but we even have our own guy. Our legend of the one dude that missed. Like Jay Parker, love the dude to death, man. And like that guy still catches hell for missing a kick in a bowl game in 30 years ago, like literally 30 years ago.
Yeah.
People can still give him crap, and it's not his, and again, it wasn't like it was his fault. It wasn't like he intentionally went out there and missed it. It was like crap happens, but to this day, like a kicker missing a kick, like wide left was a thing in Army Navy for years, So
I was at both those games.
You know what I mean? So it matters, particularly when the games are close. And so like, for those of you guys that have super powerhouse offense, air raid guys, you probably don't worry about the kicking game as much. But as a fan of like smaller teams that usually punch up a weight class, usually a kick is the difference between winning and losing. And I've seen a lot of block kicks. I know that's how Wyoming beat App State, right?
Yeah.
Field goal got blocked. So when you're looking at college football, the landscape, it's like, are special teams getting better, or are kickers just kicking lower and they're just not as good this season? I don't know, but I've seen a lot of missed and blocked kicks, and I would agree with you on the increase in blocks as well. But we're going to move on to the next read. So if you don't mind, Dano.
So as you know, if you have listened to this show, Craig Oxane is the vice president of residential lending for Draper and Kramer in Chicago, licensed to lend in all 50 states, a West Point alum from the class of 1994, based out of Chicago. He's one of the largest VA lenders in the country. Friends, Craig is going to give you super competitive rates. He's going to give you the best deal he possibly can, which is important because this mortgage process is super confusing. Interest rates move all over the place, and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And, can you lock in? And how does all this thing work? It's not the time to deal with somebody who doesn't care about you, like some mindless call center, random big box bank, website, just whatever. Like that's a bad deal. This is one of those times when you'd like to have somebody that you can trust. And so this is where Craig comes in, right? And this is how the West Point Network functions. Craig is helping us stay in business here at As for Football, and we're helping you get the best deal on a mortgage that we possibly can by introducing you to the very man that you need to meet. Plus, Craig doesn't charge lenders fees for veterans. That's a huge savings, like $1,300. So, get that money. Craig Oxane, Vice President of Residential Lending. Check him out. Links on our website. Just go to asforfootball.com. Find the little link. Click on it. You'll fill out a little questionnaire. You'll be talking to Craig in a couple of hours. Everybody gives the guy 5 stars. It's just a much better experience within the very stressful process of buying a house.
Thanks, Dano. So let's move on to the games of the week. Change it up a little bit because we would run down a lot, and it's kind of like as Joe says, hey, time to eat your vegetables, and that's a lot of talking. So we're going to shorten it up a little bit, but we'll hit the high points. Hey, we actually have football on Wednesday, guys. College football on Wednesday night. You got Jacksonville State. They're actually good, man.
Yeah, they are good.
The new and improved Gamecocks. I didn't realize, and I'll pause real quick, but I didn't realize that JMU can't even go to a bowl game this year. So it's like a 2-year ban for.
Yeah,
FBS
they got really, and that's unfortunate because they got a decent chance of winning the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
Like I would say at least 40% chance right now that they're the best team in the Sun Belt.
Yeah. And then of course I was watching the graphic this weekend and they were like, yep, they applied for the waiver this year. And they were like, nope. Back in April, they told them like no chance.
That's awful. That's just, you're just punishing the kids. What is that? That's awful.
Well, it's the NCAA, man. Like
that's awful.
When you make $1 billion every 2 years, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you got Jacksonville State and Middle Tennessee kicking off at ESPNU on Wednesday night. You've got FIU and New Mexico State at 9:00 on CBS Sports Network. We got games on Thursday. Yeah, we got games on Thursday and Friday as well. Sam Houston at Liberty. That should actually be a decent game. Liberty's not so great. Sam Houston is not so great. So either you're going to see terrible football or you're going to see a really close contest because these guys are more evenly matched than they have with their previous opponents. Western Kentucky against Louisiana Tech. That should be an interesting one, kicking at 8 at ESPNU. Moving on to Friday, this is actually a game that I would watch. So you got K-State and Oklahoma State kicking at 7:30 on ESPN, and then you got Nebraska and Illinois. Again, Illinois is in the driver's seat for that one. I would be surprised if Nebraska. I said they're going to go 1-11. I would be surprised if they go 0-12 this season, to be completely honest, because they are horrible.
It looks bad. I mean, it's
it
looks like already got a coaching crisis out there.
Yeah, it looks like the AD owes Scott Frost an apology or another bottle of liquor, whichever you prefer. Moving on to Saturday slate, early kick. You got Boston College at Army, so that's a home game. We'll dive deep into the Boston College matchup on the Army football show, but usually Army plays better at home. So good chance of them, pulling something off.
Boston College also plays better at home. They travel not so well.
Yeah, BC has been looking rough on the road. So this one will be an interesting matchup. It might be closer than the experts think. You've got number 23 LSU against number 21 Mizzou kicking at noon on ESPN. Hey, LSU needs to pack their bags because they're going to be moving out of the top 25 for sure. Maryland against Ohio State. That one's going to be a much, much closer game. I think Ohio State finally started to get their sea legs last week. They had a bye to kind of work on the offense, so it'll be interesting to see. But they have a great 1-2 punch in running backs, coming out of the backfield. They got Bynum, who can run in between the tackles pretty hard. And then they've got Travion Henderson, who's like their speed back, so he can get to the outside. And the starting quarterback for Ohio State, believe it or not, used to throw balls at Marvin Harrison Jr. in high school. So there's a relationship there. But I think, again, Tua's younger brother is a much better athlete. So I think when you talk about quarterback advantage, Maryland, running game advantage, I would give it to Ohio State. But I think this one's going to be a much closer contest than the line on it will say. We've got Oklahoma and Texas. You got Red River Rivalry. Whew, that one's always a good one.
Yeah, I'm not upset to be at the game, but that's one that I would normally watch.
Yeah, I would be throwing like you can throw the baby out with the bathwater as well as the records, because that one's just going to be a tough contest. Period. You got Washington State, UCLA. Washington State starting to heat up. UCLA, they're UCLA. They're usually a 7-5 team year after year. We'll see what happens. North Texas at Navy. Hopefully Navy can continue to be in this nosedive. If you're in the coaching staff from Navy, you want to beat North Texas. I don't know. North Texas is always like better in the season, and then they kind of lose it towards the tail end. I mean, you saw that when Army played them a couple of years ago. Yeah, not the same players, but execution in the Army game at
same
home.
Coaching staff, I think that staff is still there.
Yeah, versus, what happened in the bowl game when they played them twice in the same year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Virginia Tech versus Florida State. Florida State should whip up on Virginia Tech pretty handily, but we'll see. Syracuse has to bounce back, but hey, they got a tough contest with Drake May and the crew at UNC. Like, those guys are good, man. I think Syracuse has had their heyday. They said, what was it? I read a graphic somewhere that they had not gone 5-0 in consecutive seasons since like the 70s. And
they always start tough and then tail off. Army caught them the wrong week.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they didn't look so great. And the other part of it is like they're not using their quarterback to his fullest potential because that guy can run. He's got wheels, but they don't use him in the running game very much because I think they're trying to protect him. And it makes sense because, like, if he's healthy, if Schrader's healthy throughout the rest of the season, gives him a better chance of winning some of their other games. But, hey, man, do not be afraid to let the guy run, particularly if it's a close contest.
It looked to me like they were intentionally not running him. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, but they were intentionally not running him against Army to the extent that they could avoid it, which was smart and I thought was a good plan for them. But then, okay, but now you've got Clemson in your house and you're getting your asses kicked. Now is the time you got to play the cards. So
you got to do something, and they just continued to stay where they were. Yeah, Alabama and Texas A&M. A couple weeks ago, this matchup wasn't very interesting. That's a number 11 versus unranked Texas A&M team. You got UConn and Rice. Whew. That one's on there just for you, Dan.
They ain't gonna win that one.
That one's on the.
It's not the weeks for them to bounce back.
Yeah, that one's on the plus. You've got Colorado against Arizona State on Pac-12 Network. Of course, I think that'll be a better game than expected. I think Colorado has made some adjustments. Arizona State is, I think they're 3-2 or 2-3. They're basically 500, so you're going to have two 500 teams basically facing each other. I think that'll be a good matchup. You've got number 20 Kentucky taking on number 1 Georgia. If Georgia plays against Kentucky the way that they played against Auburn, they're going to lose.
That's not what's going to happen. Yeah. Just prepare yourself for them to shake it off, stand up like a dog, shake all the water off and look like Georgia.
Yeah. Well, I hope so because Georgia has not looked like Georgia all season. They're winning, but they're not winning impressively. And I think
just throw it to Brock Bowers. It ain't that hard.
Yeah.
He's going to be the best player on the field. It is what it is.
Yeah. That guy's a monster. He really is an underutilized asset. And I don't know why they don't use him this year. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You got Arkansas taking on Ole Miss. Ole Miss is good, man. Their offense is strong. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue the offensive momentum. They put it on LSU, and every time I think of Lane Kiffin, I either think of Tosh.0 or I think of some mad scientist, mixing up an offense in a lab because that guy can pull out some tricks. And that was one of the games that I was watching that I saw a modified toss sweep. So a lot of guys are doing those long pitches these days. And Ole Miss was one of them. So the quarterback will take 2 steps and he's basically underhand pitching it to the running back, which is it looks weird because I don't think we see a lot of toss sweeps in college anymore, but I think it's starting to come back, with the RPO style, and guys are actually stretching the defense, and it's an option of sorts, but it's not. It looks like more of a design play to let the end crash, and then you toss it to the outside to get you to your athletes in space. But Ole Miss has been doing that quite a bit this season. You got Michigan and Minnesota. Hey, man, PJ Fleck is the coolest bald guy in college football, and that's really all he's got going for him in this game.
I mean, Michigan's best win this year is over Rutgers, so assuming that they also blow out Minnesota, at what point do people start to honestly believe in them?
Yeah, I don't think people will believe them until they beat Ohio State, to be honest.
All
because, well, I mean, look at what they did last year. They went all the way to the end. They laid an egg against TCU, which by all rights, it shouldn't have been on the field with them, according to, all their fan base. But we saw how that panned out.
Well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we got Notre Dame at Louisville. That'll be a good game. Got number 10 versus number 25. Louisville is decent.
They're good. I think they're undefeated, 5-0.
Yeah. They're a solid team. Notre Dame is good. Fresno State at Wyoming. Hey, that one's going to be a wild, wild west shootout again. Wyoming is good. Fresno State is good. I think both of these teams are going to that's one of those games that's going to come down to the wire.
The battle of which team is going to beat Air Force in the Mountain West Conference Championship game.
Basically. Yeah, it's a precursor for the, number 1 contender to take out Air Force. You got Texas Tech and Baylor. Baylor looked great. I don't know if you watched that game against UCF, man.
I'm not a believer in Baylor. No, I'm selling Baylor this season.
Oh, Baylor was terrible, but they had a great comeback against UCF, and I will, tip of the cap to those guys for being able to close out the game. That's really all it was. Got Georgia Tech and Miami. That's an old ACC matchup. We'll see. I mean,
Tech got beat by Bowling Green, man. Destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are they've completely fallen off. They look good the first 2 games, and they're hanging it up. Go back to doing nerd stuff because you ain't winning on the football field. So you got Oregon State at Cal. That'll be a decent game. That's a really, really late kick on the Pac-12 network. And then your nightcap for the evening is Arizona and USC. Like USC is going to knock themselves out of the top 10 if they don't start playing some defense.
Wild, man. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, I will be at the Army game. I'm a little sad that we won't be able to see the Red River Rivalry. I sort of wish that they would show that one, like highlights of that during the commercial breaks at Mikey Stadium, but I'm sure they won't. Talked about Kentucky at Georgia, Notre Dame at Louisville. And I'm interested to see if the Mids can bounce back against North Texas, but I don't believe. Like, I'm just, I don't know that they're necessarily going to lose the locker room, but that was like a gut-wrenching loss. And the way that they lost, like they're up, and then it looks like it's going to be a close game, and then they just fall completely apart. Like it was tough.
Yeah. Well, more than likely, I'll be tuning into the Wednesday and Thursday night matchups just because I can.
Yeah.
And Friday for sure. I think K-State and Oklahoma State will be a better contest than most people think. K-State's good. I mean, they beat TCU last year and they've looked okay this season. Oklahoma State is good. I think Bedlam is a more appropriate test for them. Of course, I'll be watching Army and BC. I'll dip into the LSU and Missouri game. I'll probably watch the first half of that unless it's close. And then, of course, my eyes will be locked in on Maryland and Ohio State because I think that's going to be one of the better games on. And, of course, the Red Rover Rivalry. And they have to have all these games kicking at noon, which super, super sucks because those are like the best part of the schedule this week.
Yeah, I can't figure it out. Some weeks that noon hour is horrible, and some weeks the noon hour is the best.
Yeah.
The only thing that annoys me is when they put all the good games in prime time because, by that time I've seen 15 games and I'm like, okay, I got to take a break.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely agree with you. And then, of course, you're going to have the Pac-12 after dark, which is they've got two games. Oregon State and California, not so interesting. Arizona, it'll be interesting how many points are like take the over on that one because USC plays no defense. Like if I'm a betting man, I'd take the over on all the rest of the USC games because they are not going to stop anyone. Like there's a Pop Warner team that is licking its chops on the USC secondary because those guys are horrible. But anything else that we covered? It's time to
let's do our locks of the week, man.
Yeah. All right. Moving into weekly locks.
Weekly locks.
Dano, what you got?
I went 1-2 last week. I'm now 2 games under 500 again this season. I think I'm having the worst season I've ever had since we've been doing this show. UConn lost, but at least they covered. Syracuse freaking no-showed, and Joe also took that game, so at least I don't feel bad. And then I took Georgia State to cover against Troy, and they got smoked. I had turned that one off. The Panthers, they just got gobsmacked. So anyway, back on the horse this week. Oklahoma plus 6.5 versus Texas. I actually like Oklahoma to win outright. I don't know why, but I'm a believer in Oklahoma. Not like I've watched a ton of their games, but I just give me them plus 6.5. I will say the line is still moving in that direction. So if you're thinking about taking the Sooners, wait and take them later in the week. Boston College at Army over 51.5. Boston College has not been good at all against the run this season, especially on the road. But their offense is like coming around. I sort of think that game's going to be like an insane shootout. And finally, North Texas plus 6 at Navy. That's another one that's slowly moving in the right direction if you want to bet on North Texas. But I really want to play the over, but it's 61.5, and I don't necessarily trust Navy's offense to keep up. But, like we said, the Mids have a decent rushing defense, but North Texas is going to throw all over them. Like that passing attack is good, and Navy's secondary is not. And my fourth pick, if I was going to make 4, but this is just a lean, would be Bama minus 2.5 at Texas A&M.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I totally screwed up and didn't put my lines in here, so I'm going to go through some picks of the games that I'm going to be watching. But for sure, I will take, like I said, I'm going to take the over on the Arizona USC game just because their defense is terrible. I will take. I don't know what the line is points wise, but I'll take Michigan in the points because I think they're gonna roll up Minnesota pretty bad.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
I think it's like 14.5, something like that, and it'll probably get greater towards the end of the week. And then, my last pick, of course, is going to be take the. I'm gonna roll with this. Take the under on Maryland and Ohio State because I think they're going to score, but it's not going to be like one wild shootout. I think it's going to be like a 31-24 game, and I think it's like 55 points is the line on that one. So
Michigan -20 at Minnesota.
Yeah,
you still?
Yeah, I'll take that.
All right.
I mean, if they play like they played this past week, they'll hit that pretty easy.
Okay.
You know. Now, if they play like they played the week before, no. But it's hard to tell because we just don't know which version of JJ McCarthy is going to show up. To be completely honest,
that's fair.
Like if he was more consistent, like honestly, he would be the best quarterback in football if the kid was more consistent. And again, the over/under on the Ohio State game, I just pulled it up. It's 55.5. Yeah, definitely take the under on that one. It's going to be like a 31-14 game. I think the Buckeyes will jump out early with a score or two, maybe 10 points at halftime, and then they'll rack up a couple more in the second half. They've been playing better in the second half. And again, everybody's trying to get Marvin Harrison Jr. going, and like that's the big one for sure, is getting that guy rolling. But they're actually using him as a weapon. And then let me see.
Go figure.
Yeah, like that dude is the best wide receiver. I saw some guy that was doing basically like a fantasy draft in college football, and he basically is hitting up all these guys on Twitter going, hey, who should I pick on my team? And like all these guys are like, oh, make sure you get Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, duh. Like anybody's picking a wide receiver, like that should be your number one pick. But
let me just stop you right there for a second. Let me put in a plug for our Patreon.
Okay.
Patreon.com/asforfootball. We have our games and locks of the week where we write down all these picks if you want to know who we picked and like what our record is for the season. As I have said, I am 2 games under 500, so you don't necessarily want to ride with me. But Rob you were up by like 4 games or something, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm at 500 right now after this past week because I picked 4 games because I was stupid. But yeah. Again, but really what it shows is it just shows the inconsistency of college football, right? Like that's the best part is like there's a reason why people are making money and making bets. And like if you really want to dive deep, text Joe because he'll give you like 47 different parlays that he's been working on all week long. And so
he had that one 6-leg parlay that he was texting the group chat on Saturday. Did that thing hit?
Yeah, he did. He hit on Shedeur Sanders getting over 300 yards passing. Like ridiculous. But the thing was that the way he was playing the first half, he didn't even look close. He only had like 170 something yards. But like that guy's dude, like
he's a good player.
Like honestly, Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback on probably. I won't even say Colorado's a bad team. They're above average.
Yeah, they're okay. Yeah. The team itself is okay. Like they got a couple of real superstars and some players.
And I think next year is going to be the year. You're going to see what happens. And I think a lot of people are, booing on Coach Sanders, and it's like, hey, whatever, man. Like the guy's doing it different. Hey, you know what? Different doesn't necessarily mean bad. Like that would mean Army, Navy, and Air Force are terrible because we run an option, right? I mean, different doesn't necessarily mean bad, and so I think there's something to be said about it. But Shedeur Sanders has got like 1,700 yards passing already this season, and we're 5 games in. That kid's going to have 3,000 yards passing, easy. He's going to be a top quarterback on like a 5-7 team. What are you going to do?
I mean, it's going to work out for him. Give it another year,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he's a junior, so I don't know if he got hit with the COVID year or not, but he could stay 2 more years. And like, oof. Like I would hate to see that.
That's an interesting that's a really interesting thing because Dion, Coach Prime is not going to let his son miss any tricks as far as like making the maximum amount of money from ball. So whatever Shedeur Sanders does is the correct thing to do.
Yeah.
Just business wise.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the things that people don't like is, you're watching a coach that's like not only coaching football, but he's also holding these kids up on the business end.
Yeah, of course he is. Well, that's the job.
Like this is how you monetize everything. Because like if you watch a Colorado game, every commercial is Deion Sanders. Like he's got an almond commercial, he's got Aflac commercial, and so he's making money, off of all those arrangements, and like good on him. Like, hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Listen, I swam at Army, and I know that's as for a Division I athlete, that's on the low end of hours per week, and it was easily 25 hours per week, easily.
Yeah.
So please, these kids, that's a job, and they can get paid, and it's all good.
Yeah, and I think I have a newfound respect for coaches that can balance both the business end as well as the coaching end.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Because a lot of these guys just struggle as coaches, and I think that's the big difference is that like he exposes his team because he knows that there's no such thing as bad press, but even still he does it in a way that doesn't, belittle or demean anybody. Like he's got that one kid that's a 5-star recruit that's not playing, and everybody's like, well, why isn't he playing? And literally he's like, because he doesn't watch film. Right? Like how can you be mad at a coach for like, I don't let the kid play because he doesn't watch film? Like that makes perfect sense. Like why? Because everybody thinks Peyton Manning is one of the best quarterbacks in football, arguably. Why? Because he watched a lot of film.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I mean, there's some people, I think some people are just angry just to be angry. Anyway, Bandwagon Fantasy Sports. Hey, Matt's on top. He's got 66 points. I'm in second place, tied with Dano. We both got 60 points. Joey O busted into the top 5 this week, so he's moving on his way up. I have a favorite thing this week, and it's very, very simple. You got Army. Sprint football is 2-0, and they take on Navy this week. They will be on ESPN Plus. Anyway, we will wrap this thing up. This is the College Football Roundtable, or 2 O's and an NCO. Our NCO is out making sure people are staying off the grass. And so hopefully we'll get Joe back here next week. But as always,
Joe, you were missed.
Yes, as always, College Football Roundtable. We're covering college football, doing what we do. Thanks again for joining us. And if there's a topic that you want us to cover on the roundtable, just give us a shout out on the socials. Anyway, we will be looking forward to bringing you the Army football show tomorrow. And we may have something special for you again a little bit later this week, but we're working with James from Brigade Review on that. And that's your tease. And then we'll wrap up the show. And as always, it's great hosting for you. And we will talk to you guys next week. Thanks.
Beat Boston College.
Beat them. Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Tune in next week as the AFF team brings you more hot takes and college football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first platform to perform online auctions and sales for farm animals. BuyerBarn.com is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and are extending a special discount to military veterans who want to help in the revolution of the family farm. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn.com, BYREBARN.com to learn more and to get started, or email them at info@BuyerBarn.com. Thanks again for listening to Ask for Football College Football Roundtable, and as always, beat Navy.